After days of speculation, clips circulating online, and non-stop debate about the murder situation, fans were waiting for clarity, emotion, maybe even a strong statement that would settle the conversation once and for all. But instead, what came out has left people more confused than before, and the internet is now divided over what his words really mean. At first, it looked like a normal response. Controlled, careful, measured. But as the clip spread, viewers started replaying it again and again, noticing something unusual in his tone, his pauses, and the way certain questions were answered without actually being answered. And that's where things took a turn. Because instead of shutting down rumors, Master P's reaction seems to have fueled them. Social media exploded with theories. Old interviews resurfaced. And suddenly, people started asking a much bigger question. Was that really just a standard statement? Or is there something deeper he's not saying? Some fans believe he's protecting private family matters and choosing silence over controversy. Others think his reaction hints at tension, pressure, or even information the public has never been told. But what really shocked everyone is how quickly the narrative changed after his appearance, almost like one moment shifted the entire conversation online. Now, every word is being analyzed, every pause is being replayed, and every expression is being questioned. And the biggest mystery of all remains unanswered. If Master P really did speak out, why does it feel like he said so much without actually saying anything at all? Master P finally spoke out about the situation surrounding the murder, and almost instantly, the internet expected clarity, direction, and closure. But what actually came out of that moment did something very different. Instead of calming the discussion, it reignited it. And within hours, social media was filled with analysis, confusion, and renewed debate about what his reaction truly meant publicly online today worldwide. At first glance, the statement appeared controlled and intentional. Master P didn't raise his voice, didn't engage in confrontation, and didn't reveal anything dramatic. But in today's digital environment, silence, pauses, and tone can carry more weight than words themselves. And that is exactly what began pulling audiences deeper into the conversation surrounding his reaction publicly online today worldwide everywhere. Because once people started replaying the clip, small details began standing out. A pause before answering, a shift in tone during certain questions, a refusal to expand on specific topics. Individually, these moments might not seem significant, but together, they created a pattern that viewers online quickly began dissecting and debating across platforms publicly online today worldwide. At the center of this growing attention is one major question. Did Master P actually say everything he intended to say, or did his reaction leave important gaps that are now fueling speculation? Because instead of closing the conversation, his appearance seems to have opened new layers of interpretation publicly online today worldwide everywhere. And that uncertainty is what drives modern online discussion. In a world where every interview is clipped, slowed down, and replayed, even the smallest detail becomes magnified. Audiences are no longer just listening to statements. They are analyzing body language, tone shifts, and emotional restraint to understand what may be hidden beneath the surface publicly online today worldwide. As clips spread, reactions became immediate and divided. Some viewers saw Master P's response as calm, respectful, and appropriate for a sensitive situation. Others saw something entirely different, a controlled reaction that avoided key details and left too many questions unanswered. And that split in perception quickly turned into a viral debate across social platforms worldwide publicly online today. Because in high-profile situations like this, meaning is not only created by what is said, but also by what is not said. And that gap between expression and omission is what often fuels the strongest public curiosity. Once audiences sense missing context, they begin searching for it everywhere in past interviews and older statements publicly online today worldwide. At the same time, older footage resurfaced almost immediately after the new statement. Interviews from previous years began circulating again, with viewers comparing tone, wording, and emotional delivery across different time periods. And what started as a simple reaction video quickly evolved into a deep analysis of consistency and contradiction publicly online today worldwide. Because when people believe a narrative may be incomplete, they start building their own interpretation. They connect unrelated moments, revisit forgotten clips, and form theories based on subtle emotional cues. And in this case, Master P.S. reaction became the focal point of that entire process, drawing more attention than the original discussion itself publicly online today worldwide. Some viewers believe the reaction is being misinterpreted entirely. They argue that emotional restraint does not equal secrecy, and that public figures often choose carefully measured language when dealing with sensitive personal situations. According to this view, there is no hidden meaning, only pressure, grief, and media responsibility publicly online today worldwide. But others strongly disagree. They believe the reaction feels intentionally limited, as if certain details are being consciously avoided. And for this group, every pause becomes meaningful, every vague answer becomes suspicious, and every lack of clarity becomes evidence that there's more happening behind the scenes than what is being shared publicly online today worldwide. And this is where the situation becomes even more complex. Because once interpretation splits into two opposing narratives, the conversation no longer stays rooted in facts alone. It becomes emotional, speculative, and constantly evolving. And that evolution is exactly what keeps the topic trending across social media platforms and commentary channels publicly online today worldwide. At the same time, influencers and commentary creators amplify the discussion even further. Clips were broken down frame by frame, voice tone was analyzed repeatedly, and even facial expressions were highlighted as possible indicators of deeper meaning. And once that level of scrutiny begins, every detail becomes part of a larger unfolding theory publicly online today worldwide. Because in the digital age, nothing stays contained for long. A single interview can become hundreds of interpretations within hours. And in this case, Master P.S. reaction didn't just generate discussion. It triggered a wave of reinterpretation that pulled the entire history of the situation back into public focus online today worldwide. As attention grew, so did speculation about what might come next. Some viewers believe this is only the beginning of more revelations or clarifications. Others think the silence will continue, leaving audiences to interpret meaning on their own. But either way, the uncertainty has already changed how people view the situation publicly online today worldwide. Because once doubt enters a narrative, it rarely leaves. It expands, evolves, and reshapes how every past detail is understood. And right now, that process is still unfolding. Master P.S. reaction didn't end the conversation. It deepened it, turning a single moment into a much larger discussion that continues growing across platforms globally. And that is why this moment feels different. Not because of what was fully said, but because of everything people believe was left unsaid. And as long as those unanswered questions remain, the conversation surrounding Master P.S. reaction will continue evolving, replaying, and expanding far beyond the original interview itself publicly online today worldwide. As the reaction from Master P continued circulating online, the conversation didn't slow down, it intensified. What started as a single interview clip quickly transformed into a global discussion filled with analysis, speculation, and debate. And the more people rewatched it, the more they felt like something important was sitting just beneath the surface of what was actually said publicly online today worldwide. At first, many assumed the reaction would fade after the initial wave of attention. That's usually what happens with celebrity statements: momentary interest, brief debate, then silence. But in this case, something unusual happened. The conversation didn't disappear. Instead, it multiplied, with new interpretations forming every hour as viewers dissected tone, timing, and emotional control publicly online today worldwide. Because in modern media culture, audiences don't just consume statements, they investigate them. Every pause becomes a potential clue. Every hesitation becomes a possible message. And every carefully chosen word is re-evaluated under the assumption that there may be more meaning hidden between the lines than what is directly expressed publicly online today worldwide everywhere. At the center of this growing attention is one recurring idea: the belief that Master P.S. reaction may not have been incomplete by accident, but instead intentionally measured, not necessarily to hide information, but to avoid expanding on details that could open up deeper emotional or legal complications surrounding the situation publicly online today worldwide. And that possibility alone is enough to fuel endless discussion. Because once audiences believe there might be controlled communication happening, every element of the statement becomes significant. Nothing is seen as casual anymore. Everything is interpreted as intentional, from pauses to phrasing to emotional restraint publicly online today worldwide across social platforms. At the same time, old interviews and previous statements from years ago began resurfacing again. Fans started comparing earlier reactions with the most recent one, trying to identify shifts in tone or emotional differences that might suggest something has changed over time. And that comparison process quickly turned into a massive online analysis trend publicly online today worldwide. Because when people are searching for meaning, they naturally look for patterns. And patterns are often found not in what is said once, but in how things change over time. That is why viewers began aligning different interviews side by side, searching for inconsistencies or emotional variations that could hint at a deeper unresolved situation publicly online today worldwide. Some viewers argue that the reaction is being overanalyzed. They believe Master P's tone reflects emotional exhaustion, responsibility, and a desire to avoid escalating public controversy. According to this perspective, there is no hidden message, only a controlled attempt to manage a sensitive situation with respect and caution publicly online today worldwide. But others strongly reject that interpretation. They believe the lack of detail itself is meaningful. To them, the absence of direct explanation is not neutrality, it is avoidance. And that belief has fueled countless online discussions where every word is treated like potential evidence of something not fully disclosed to the public, yet publicly online today worldwide. And as these opposing interpretations spread, the conversation becomes more divided. One group focuses on emotional context and restraint. The other focuses on omissions and ambiguity. And between those two perspectives, a growing space of uncertainty continues expanding, keeping the topic alive across commentary channels and social media platforms globally, publicly online today worldwide. At the same time, content creators and analysts began breaking the reaction into smaller segments. Short clips were slowed down, replayed, and re-examined repeatedly. Tone shifts were highlighted. Facial expressions were analyzed frame by frame. And what was once a simple interview started becoming a detailed subject of digital interpretation and speculation publicly online today worldwide. Because in today's attention economy, every moment is content, and every piece of content is open to reinterpretation. A single pause can become a theory, a single phrase can become a headline, and a single reaction can evolve into a full narrative that spreads far beyond its original context publicly online today worldwide everywhere. As speculation grew, so did curiosity about what might happen next. Some viewers believe more clarification will eventually come, either through follow-up interviews or public statements that address the growing discussion. Others believe no further explanation will be given, leaving the audience to continue interpreting the situation indefinitely publicly online today worldwide. And that uncertainty is exactly what keeps attention alive, because unresolved narratives tend to persist longer than fully explained ones. When a story feels complete, it fades. But when questions remain unanswered, it continues circulating, evolving with every new viewer who discovers it and adds their own interpretation publicly online today worldwide. Meanwhile, older context surrounding the situation began resurfacing again, adding even more depth to the conversation. Past emotional interviews, archived statements, and previously overlooked comments started circulating alongside the new reaction, creating a layered timeline of interpretation that spans multiple years of public discussion and media coverage publicly online today worldwide. Because once people start connecting timeframes, the story becomes less about a single moment and more about a pattern of behavior. And that shift is what transforms a reaction into a narrative. It is no longer just about what was said. It becomes about how communication has evolved over time publicly online today worldwide. At this stage, the discussion is no longer limited to one interview. It has expanded into a broader examination of communication, silence, and interpretation in high-profile situations. And that expansion is exactly why the topic continues gaining traction, as new audiences discover it and add their perspective to the ongoing debate publicly online today worldwide. Right now, the situation remains unresolved in public perception. There is no single agreed interpretation. Instead, there are competing narratives, each supported by different angles of analysis. And that division is what keeps the story active, constantly resurfacing in cycles of renewed attention across platforms globally, publicly online today worldwide. Because as long as ambiguity exists, interpretation will continue. And as long as interpretation continues, the conversation will not end. Master P's reaction has become more than a statement. It has become a reference point for ongoing debate, analysis, and speculation that continues expanding far beyond its original moment publicly online today worldwide. Now, the discussion surrounding Master P's reaction has reached a point where it is no longer just about one interview or one statement. It has evolved into a much larger conversation about interpretation, silence, and meaning. And as time passes, the reaction continues to circulate online, gaining new layers of analysis with every wave of viewers discovering it publicly online today worldwide. Because once a moment becomes widely analyzed, it stops belonging to the original context. It becomes a shared narrative shaped by millions of interpretations. And in this case, Master P's reaction has transformed into exactly that, an ongoing public debate where meaning is constantly being reassigned depending on perspective, emotion, and prior beliefs publicly online today worldwide. At the center of this ongoing attention is a simple but powerful idea, the belief that what was said may not be as important as what was not said. And that idea alone has kept the conversation alive far beyond its initial release, because silence, in public perception, often creates more questions than answers publicly online today worldwide. As more people continue revisiting the clip, the interpretation continues evolving. Some viewers now focus on emotional restraint as a sign of professionalism and protection. Others interpret the same restraint as avoidance or intentional limitation. And between these two interpretations lies a growing space of uncertainty that keeps the discussion constantly active publicly online today worldwide. Because uncertainty fuels engagement, and engagement fuels repetition. The more people watch, the more they notice. The more they notice, the more they question. And the more they question, the more theories emerge. That cycle is what has turned a single reaction into a long-running online discussion that continues expanding across platforms globally, publicly online today worldwide. At the same time, commentary creators have amplified the situation further by breaking the reaction into fragments. Each pause, each tone shift, and each facial expression has been analyzed repeatedly. And while these analyses do not provide definitive answers, they contribute to the growing sense that there may be deeper meaning hidden beneath the surface publicly online today worldwide. Because in digital culture, interpretation often becomes more influential than original intent. Once a narrative gains momentum online, it develops its own identity. It no longer depends on what was originally meant. It depends on how audiences choose to understand it. And that is exactly what is happening with this reaction publicly online today worldwide. Some viewers believe the reaction reflects emotional responsibility and careful communication. They argue that public figures in sensitive situations often choose restraint to avoid unnecessary escalation. From this perspective, the reaction is not suspicious. It is controlled, respectful, and appropriate given the seriousness of the topic publicly online today worldwide. But others remain unconvinced. They believe the lack of detail itself is meaningful. To them, the absence of direct answers suggests that there are boundaries being carefully maintained. And those boundaries, whether intentional or not, are what fuel ongoing speculation and keep audiences searching for clarity that may never fully arrive publicly online today worldwide. And as these opposing viewpoints continue circulating, the conversation becomes more layered. It is no longer about agreement or disagreement. It is about interpretation versus interpretation. Each side builds its own understanding based on the same footage, yet arrives at completely different conclusions. And that divergence is what keeps the topic constantly active online globally, publicly today worldwide. At the same time, older context continues resurfacing and influencing perception. Past interviews, historical comments, and earlier reactions are being compared with a current statement. And through that comparison, viewers attempt to identify patterns or emotional shifts that might suggest a deeper story unfolding over time publicly online today worldwide. Because when people cannot find answers in the present, they turn to the past. And when they examine the past closely enough, they begin constructing narratives that connect separate moments into one continuous thread. That process is what transforms scattered information into a perceived storyline with hidden meaning publicly online today worldwide. As this continues, the reaction itself becomes less important than the discussion surrounding it. It becomes a symbol of something larger, uncertainty, communication gaps, and public interpretation of emotional restraint. And once a moment becomes symbolic, it no longer belongs to a single event. It becomes part of ongoing cultural analysis publicly online today worldwide. Meanwhile, speculation about future developments continues to grow. Some believe additional statements may eventually clarify the situation. Others believe silence will continue, allowing interpretation to evolve indefinitely. And both possibilities keep the conversation alive, because neither provides final closure to the questions being asked publicly online today worldwide. And that lack of closure is what sustains attention. In a digital environment where content moves quickly, unresolved narratives stand out. They remain in circulation longer because they continue generating discussion. And in this case, the uncertainty surrounding Master P's reaction ensures that the conversation does not fade away easily publicly online today worldwide. Because once audiences invest emotionally in interpretation, they continue revisiting the same material. Each viewing creates new perspectives. Each perspective creates new theories. And each theory feeds back into the cycle of discussion. That cycle is what has kept this reaction relevant far beyond its original moment publicly online today worldwide. At this point, the situation is no longer about confirming or denying hidden meaning. It is about understanding why certain moments trigger such intense public analysis. And that question itself has become part of the conversation, expanding the discussion beyond the reaction into the psychology of interpretation itself publicly online today worldwide. And that is why this story continues to evolve even without new official developments. It is sustained not by facts alone, but by perception, curiosity, and ongoing debate. As long as those elements exist, the reaction will remain active in public discussion, constantly reinterpreted through new perspectives and renewed attention publicly online today worldwide. Because in the end, the most powerful narratives are not always the ones that are fully explained. Sometimes, they are the ones that leave space for interpretation. And Master P's reaction has become exactly that, a moment that continues to live not because it is finished, but because it is still being understood publicly online today worldwide. If you made it to the end of this documentary breakdown, then you already understand why Master P's reaction is still creating so much debate, and why people are still trying to interpret every detail of what was said and what was not said during that moment publicly online today worldwide across different platforms. Now, the real question is simple. What do you think is actually going on here? Do you believe Master P's reaction was just careful, emotional communication meant to protect sensitive information? Or do you believe there are still deeper explanations and unanswered questions that the public has not fully been told yet in this situation? Because right now, the internet is completely divided. Some viewers believe everything has already been explained clearly through available interviews and statements, while others strongly feel that the tone, pauses, and lack of detail suggest there is still more beneath the surface that has not been openly discussed or clarified yet publicly online today worldwide. So I want you to go down in the comments right now and share your honest opinion. What do you think is really happening behind the scenes? Do you see this as over-analysis from the internet? Or do you believe there's a deeper story that people are slowly trying to piece together from limited information? And if you found this breakdown interesting or eye-opening, make sure you hit the like button so more people can see this analysis and join the conversation. Every like helps push this video further so more viewers can share their own perspective on the situation publicly online today worldwide. And finally, if you want more deep documentary-style investigations like this, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next upload. Because stories like this don't always end when the video stops. Sometimes the biggest questions are the ones that continue long after the discussion begins.